If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, and you guessed it, it's free. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in just one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Pieces of a Nation. Welcome back, Pieces of a Nation listeners. Thank you so much for coming back onto this platform. This is the podcast that makes you feel stuff. I feel really, really good stuff. My name is Richard Chu, and please follow us on Instagram at Pieces of a Nation. Also, please support us on Patreon. It's only $5 a month. Just go to www.patreon.com // Pieces of a Nation. Also, if you like any of these conversations, please leave a comment below and any suggestions you'd like to hear in the future. Today, I have a special lady, and she's a friend of a friend. Actually, no, she's a friend. Wait, hold on a second. She's a friend. Wait, she's a friend of a friend. Right, that's right. This is what we were talking about earlier, right? Your brain's a little fried. You can't really comprehend, or articulate. But she's a friend of a friend, and when I first talked to her, I was just really amazed by her background, her history, her purpose in what she wants to do in the entertainment world. She's a producer and filmmaker. She was the former CEO and CCO of Carl Laemmle Studios, and she's also the co-author of the Guide to Managing Post-Production for Film, TV, and Digital. Dawn Higginbotham, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a lot. That's a lot to get out of breath.
It's so funny because thank you. It's so funny because obviously this is a very loose show, and when I listen to other podcasts and they introduce so precisely, right? And I just thought, that's not me. And, I feel like my listeners like to listen to my fumbles and mumbles sometimes. But if not, they'll let me know.
I think it's more endearing. I think it actually makes you feel like a real person,
Oh, good. Thank you. That's what I look to do in life, is to be as real as possible. And I'm glad that's resonating with you at least.
Yeah, it's better than having one of those fakey introduction that feels like you're walking on a talk show or something, tonight on the Tonight Show, introducing.
Yeah. It's so funny because the first 4 or 5, maybe 6 shows, I was trying to feel the show out and how I can introduce the show. And I think on one episode, I literally said, man, this intro sounds just so sticky. I go, I have to change this. And whoever I was interviewing at the time she was laughing, or he was laughing. I can't remember who it was, but yeah, it just got to the point where it just sounded so sticky. And I thought, I can't do this. I cannot go this route. I have to do something real. Yeah.
Because then you're going to have to start throwing, you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car.
Please get me a car. No, I'm kidding. So what's up? How, I know we talked a little bit about, just a little chit chat before, trying to get your name right and how people are saying things. But how have you been so far? How's everything going?
Good. A little bit of trippiness over the last year, I think we've all been kind of getting back to what was sort of normal. I don't know if this industry that I'm in you could ever call it normal. So
never. It's one Ella Street trip. That's what it is.
Yeah. You kind of feel like you're just sort of tripping your way through it, but it has been, it's been a journey for sure. I think it's been a lot of creative thinking around things last year, trying to, okay, well, I can't be on set, and I can't be around people. So what can you do on your own? So a lot of it's been writing and developing content and acquiring content and doing Zoom meetings with people and even location scouting to a certain degree. So it's really been trying to utilize that downtime to the best effect, but
Yeah.
has not been easy.
It's yeah, I can definitely concur with that one. Yeah, the past year has been same thing. Developing, having Zoom meetings, project meetings, and then obviously this podcast while dealing with. I mean, I'm literally in my home, and it's not that big of a place. So when we have to plan this out and schedule where I tell my wife, look, I'm having a 1 o'clock today. And, usually it's pretty good, but today, sometimes it's random, right? Sometimes, my son will get into this interesting mood. And so that kind of sets things back a little bit. So I'm for the past 10 minutes, for instance, before this interview, I was literally like sitting there and asking myself, how am I going to navigate through this if he decides to want to stay out here crying the whole time? And I'm just thinking, all right, okay, I gotta focus, I gotta persevere, I gotta move through this. This is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. So it's really insane.
You've seen it all the time on the news lately, and or last year anyway, where somebody's giving a news report and their kid walks in, or
Right. Right.
I don't necessarily have that issue because I don't have any children. I have plenty of nephews and nieces, but my parents and I have been back and forth because we all sort of live on our own. So we didn't have to worry about connecting during COVID and all of that. Actually, my mom spent about 7 months with me during the pandemic lockdown because she
wow.
accidentally got stuck in LA because she was there working with me
Wow.
and a friend of mine, and ended up getting stuck there for 7 months because we were trying to figure out how to get her back to Tennessee. And it was interesting navigating that. I was like, Mom, do you mind maybe chilling in the guest room for a little while, or, it was interesting, oh, fine. Okay, fine. I'll just hide. You're ashamed of your mother, that kind of
thing. most people want your mother here, like
actually
that
they do.
Yeah, right.
Right. Well, especially when we're working on set, everyone loves my mom because she caters. She does a lot of the catering and craft service, and people are just gaga because she makes everything homemade, and
oh wow,
they love it. So they're always asking. Plus, they just like her better. Like, oh, you're mean. Where's your mom?
No one likes the producers. Nobody likes the producers.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Well, the producers are always like the meanies. They're always like, no, you can't have that, and don't spend that money. And no, we're not on budget. We're always seen as a bad guy, but I'm kind of the middle of the road producer. I'm not necessarily the no person. I'm the, okay, you can't have that, but what I will give you is very close, and it'll still help you get your creative vision going. So, I never want to tell anyone flat out, no, you can't. I always want to give them an option or several options. Okay, well, let's think about doing it this way instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'll meet our budget, and that still gets you close to your vision. So I always feel like if you're going to say you can't, then you better find a way to get close to can.
Right. I mean, I totally agree. I'm more of this straight up producer, and a little compassionate while adding a little bit of empathy. Where if someone wants something, my first question is, why do you want it for? And we talk about that and we work things out. But I'm usually straight up and saying, look, this is the budget. This is what we're going to have. Let's work around that. Right. And let's figure that out rather than kind of, explode explode the budget up to unnecessary means of, just
Right.
craziness. There's no
Like,
reason to do that.
I want this, big location with this thing. Well, why? It's only
I want this jig, I mean, this jib, and I want this like large, drone helicopter, whatever it is. And it's like, no, man, no, we don't. No,
yeah,
we
and
don't.
we're gonna have to green screen that. Why? You can
Yeah.
just go and shoot it on this day and get exactly what you're wanting. It's trying to find creative solutions is one of the most important parts of producing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
Creative
absolutely.
solutions.
Well,
And
let's talk, let's, oh, go ahead.
oh
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying let's pivot into that. Let's pivot about your producing and your producing history. I'm extremely fascinated about your history, how you got started, and what made you want to become a producer. One of my mentors just once said, do you like to fail? Do you like to cry in bed? Is that why you become like, And I'm like, yeah, man, let's do it.
Are you a glutton for punishment?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about your producing history.
Yeah, I guess it is. It is a bit of a, whew, yeah. Well, I actually started as an actress. I started in theater and started really young in theater, and even in high school, I was always. It wasn't always about the acting. I was always about, well, if I'm not doing this show this way, can I help behind the scenes? Can I come in and help build sets or help with the wardrobe or assist the director, or at times I was the director. So I was always interested in what was going on, putting it together as much as I was as an actress. And I went to college, went to AMDA in New York, and then ended up living in New York for several years. And I started off in theater, and after doing a few tours and some off Broadway stuff, I was like, oh, I'm exhausted. I want to find something else. And a roommate of mine was an actor and was doing Die Hard with a Vengeance. That's how far back this goes.
Wow. Wow.
And he said, well, why don't you come and hang out on set with me and kind of see what what it's like, on a film set. And I was like, sure, okay. So I went in as an extra and just kind of took it all in and just was watching everybody. And then I honed in on the I think he was the second at the time, and just started asking him questions. I was like, what is it you're doing? What is that guy doing? What is that guy doing? What does that mean? And he was like, you know what? I just come back tomorrow. I'm going to hire you as a set PA. So I ended up getting my first gig as a PA on that show. And it lasted for about a month after that, several weeks. And it went on. And then I ended up getting shows from that show. And every show I did, I worked in some different capacity. I worked as a production assistant. I worked as a grip. I worked in the accounting department on a show. So every time I did something, it was a little bit different, and I learned a little bit more about that department or that crew member and that team and what it was about. And I worked in the camera department, and I was fascinated about how you change the reels of film out so quickly and how they did that without just, exposing the film. And it was really, really a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But I moved to California soon after that and started getting jobs on different productions, also in different areas of film. And I think it was my first really, really big film was Titanic in LA. And was working for Lightstorm Entertainment, and ended up somehow kind of tripped over myself and ended up working directly for John Landau, who was one of the producers on the film. And it was really eye-opening. Like I learned so much about producing on that movie because I was on it for over a year. I was on it for almost a year and a half. And and just kind of bounced from department to department, but then ended up with him. And it was, I read budgets. I had never really, I mean, other than being in accounting and looking at numbers and paychecks and that kind of thing, I'd never really seen a full budget like that. Not as involved anyway.
You're right.
And I
Right.
mean, that was like reading a novel. And I was just fascinated, and I was reading the scripts, and I was reading scripts for John that were coming in. And I was kind of listening in on some of his meetings. He was taking meetings with different writers for different projects after Titanic. And I just kind of knew then. I was like, wow, okay, I'm kind of digging this. I think this is the route I want to go. And I moved into, it was ironic. The last big blockbuster film I worked on, I think, was Armageddon. And I was working in visual effects for Armageddon. And the very first project I worked on in post-production as a post supervisor was Armageddon. So I left Armageddon at the end of the visual effects, unit production part of it. And then I went to work for Lucasfilm, who had a division called Theater Alignment Program. And we would sit in with the filmmakers and go through different processes with them, and making sure that they're getting the right post, workflow for their project. And that was the first film I got assigned. And I was like, whoa, I get to see it all come together. This is fascinating.
Wow.
So I learned a lot in post-production, learned a lot of the other side of things. And then from there went into producing. So I know that's kind of a long explanation of how I got into it, but it was a very long kind of windy road into it, of learning different. It was like going through, several years of film school, but
Right.
like, practical film school.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think, it's what you just talked about definitely has a lot of insight to where you are today. I feel like, because you've experienced so much, and it's led you to a certain point in life, right? I mean, this is the way I kind of see it too, because we experience so much in life, and we're able to pivot through different avenues of a career or a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, I started off in music, and I did that for years, and then same thing, jumped into acting. And then one of my mentors said I should start producing my own content. And so I led into that. And because I had experience with producing music, I understand producing, but it, obviously it's a whole completely different beast, right? And so, at this point, I am still acting and producing, and I love both of it. But when I look back on everything that I've experienced, I would have never thought I was here, right? Like, how did I get here? Like,
Yeah.
how am I sitting with you on Zoom, doing a podcast interview? This is blowing
I kind of
my
feel
mind.
the same way about you. I am, I think that, I think one thing feeds the other. And I think a lot of actors that I talk to get frustrated because they get the same roles over and over again. I had several neighbors that were actors who would always talk to me about, I'm just not getting the roles I want. I keep going up against the same people. I just can't seem to lock in the ones that I really, really want to go for. And then, my agent only calls me for this, or they only call me for that. And I was like, why don't you write your own content? Why don't you produce your own projects? And I work with a lot of actors as a producer. One of the things I find myself doing is working with actors who want to get into creating their own content because they want to take the reins. They want control over, they know they're more talented than what, they get 2 seconds to walk in a room and put up a video. And that's all the producer or the director seeing is that, 2 minutes. And, they don't really get to see beyond that. And, a lot of these guys, they know They're much more versatile. They're much better than what that 2 minutes shows. And so I know that, as a producer, I try to be a support for that. I've worked several of the features that I've produced have had actors who wanted to become directors, or actors who wanted to become producers, or actors that wanted to write their own content. Almost every film that I've done has had that element to it. And I feel like I'm the go-to first-time director's producer, or the go-to first-time producer's producer, because I think, like you said, it takes a good deal of empathy. It takes understanding, well, knowing the gig, knowing producing, and knowing how to get the job done. But beyond that, it is being that full support to that person during production. So being that, not buddy, because I wouldn't say like we're BFFs hanging out or anything, but you want them to know that you have their back at every turn, that they're not alone. Because I think a lot of people, they decide, I'm going to go make this movie, or I'm going to go produce this movie, or write this movie, or direct this movie. And especially if you're the writer, director, producer, and you go and you try to make that first time film and you don't have the right team behind you. I've seen people get attacked. They have people coming at them left and right, whether it's the actors coming at them or the crew saying, okay, it's end of day, I want my check, but they're still trying to get that last shot. Or,
Right.
you need that separation from, everybody can hang out and chit chat afterwards and show their appreciation and have that bonding experience before. But during production, you need someone to kind of be that separation and handle the little emergencies that come up along the way, so that it's not reaching the set, it's not reaching the director, it's not affecting the actor's concentration, it's not affecting the director's vision or concentration. So I try to be that person, because I know what it's like to be in that position.
Right. Right.
And to have
It's really,
that.
yeah, it's really putting out fires.
Yeah, definitely.
Putting out
Definitely.
a
And
lot
there's
of
always
fires.
fires. And it's stuff that you would never expect. We
Right.
had a meltdown on set one day because someone needed a special kind of hair gel, and they didn't want the gel that the hair and makeup people were using, and they had to make their hair look wet on set, and they were like, no, I'm only using this kind of hair gel. And I'm thinking, why has this not come up before now?
Right.
We're about to
Right.
go on to film this. Why is this now just coming up? So, we're scrambling. We're getting our assistants out to go and find, scour the city for this particular hair gel. And the hair and makeup people are just scratching their heads going, I don't know what's going on right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, that sounds like a whole different level of producing from where I'm at. I definitely do a lot more not low key, but smaller budget type films, right? But in terms of like higher budget, that just sounds like okay.
It's the same. It's just different.
Yeah.
I think it's the same in that there's always stress, and there's always fires, and there's always hoops to jump through. It's just different. The problems are different that come up.
Right. Right. The higher the budget, the more demands you get. I guess that's what the rule of thumb is, right?
Yeah, you just have more units to deal with, and more now with all the COVID thing, you have all the different zones to deal with, and you have all the different protocols and things to kind of follow up on. And so, yeah, it just everything. I mean, you want to say boo-hoo, but then you have bigger budget, you have more money.
Right.
Whereas, on the smaller films, you don't have the money, but you don't have the amount of, well, no, I won't say that. I think on some of the smaller films, I've actually had more sleepless nights than I have on the larger ones. I think you have more help on the larger ones. You have more backup, you have more support systems than you do on the small ones. On the small ones, you're kind of on your own. You have like a producer kind of doing everything.
Right.
And,
exactly.
On the larger ones, you have a little bit more of a team.
Right.
But I think I've been very smart in even the smallest films I've done, finding the right people, finding really good line producers, finding really good ADs, production managers, people that can really put together a solid team of people, great DPs. I've worked with incredible photography people. And so I've been very fortunate, I think, in that respect. But I sometimes it takes a while to get there. You find your, what is it? Find your tribe,
Find your tribe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the benefit of having a smaller production or, smaller production period, but like, I think the benefit of having that is that you get to curate the best crew, the best people. Right.
Yes.
Whereas, when it starts getting larger, it goes into departments, and, how do you navigate through all the personalities, all the egos, right? That gets a little bit more challenging as it starts to grow. And I can definitely see that. That's where the experience that I feel, I mean, yeah, you can deal with the experience of very, kind of going head on and, and having this like argument, or, most of the time I like to take it as like, okay, let me listen to what you're wanting to express, and I'm going to do my best to help you solve that problem, rather than, just headbutting, because that gets nowhere. Right. Egos get nowhere. And I mean, we've read so many stories on that, right? So many stories.
Yeah. But I think we're all guilty of, you're on set, you're in the heat of it all, and everything is on your shoulders, and you're not sleeping. You're maybe getting an hour or two of sleep a night, and everything is dependent on what you can put together the next day half asleep. And I think everyone's been guilty of having a moment where you're just like, wah, where you just,
right.
All right, I'm going to lose my mind today, and then I'll go back to normal tomorrow. So, I've had those moments, but I've been fortunate that I've been able to, I think everyone's gotten it. And, we've all been able to sit down and afterwards and say, okay, sorry, I slept like, 2.5 minutes yesterday. So,
right.
I apologize for losing my brains all over you, but, you try to kiss and make up as much as possible. And then you end up working with those people for 5 shows later. So,
yeah. When you're in the trenches, and you get to vomit your brains like that, people are a lot more understanding. And they can be like, okay, I get where you're at. We're the same boat. And, we saw a certain side of you. Cool. It's all good.
I never want to see that again, but no, I think I've learned, I think that's part of the learning process too, is setting your boundaries. I have learned a lot about that over the course of all these projects. Especially starting out as a producer and putting every ounce of yourself into a project. You feel like you can't say no to people, and when they call, you're on it, and when they need something, you're on it, and there's never a no. There's always just let me make that happen. Let me make that happen. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. And I'm like, that's not going to happen today because that's not important. And that's not going to happen right now because I can do that in, an hour or two. And everyone needs to cool their jets. It's not as urgent as you think it is. That one is urgent. I will take care of that one right now.
Yeah. Right.
And then making sure that you're getting the rest and that you're taking care of yourself physically, I think, is so super important, because if you fall apart, everybody else starts falling apart.
Right.
They're all kind of looking to you as the guide of how to maintain things on set. And I think if you start losing it, other people start losing it. So it's a huge learning curve, but it's something that's very important to learn as a producer.
Yeah. I have two faces during production. It's, the face where I go, cool, sounds good, focused, determined, right? And then when everything's done, like the end of the day, right? I go home and that's when I cry, right? I have to cry. I have to cry a little bit. And
Oh yeah,
get
there's
that out.
been lots of that. It's
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
okay, I'm gonna actually. There's been projects where I've made it through successfully, and I haven't shed a tear. I've been fine. I just walk around like a zombie through most of it, but then I get through the production. And like the day after, I sleep for a week. I
Yeah,
collapse, and
yeah.
I will bawl. I will cry my eyes out. I will sleep. I will eat junk food, like all the things that I didn't do on set, or
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I didn't participate in on set. I just I just do all of that in the like weeks following.
And then
It's
we go back for more, and we go
uh-huh,
back
I
for more.
know. And then you finish. They say it's a lot like giving birth. You get through the pains of it all, and you get through the.
I don't know what that feels
I
like.
me either. Other than I know it's very painful and very
Yeah.
exhausting, and oh my gosh, if it's anything like giving birth, good on your wife.
I know.
But
I know.
they kind of compare that to it, and then they compare set life to having a family, and the quibs that come up between you and your family members, and getting through it, and then being a family again, and just
where did that comparison come from? I mean, how does it? I mean, if it came from a guy, that trips my mind out, because like how would a guy understand how a birth feels like, and why would they say something like that, right?
They probably watch their wives go through it and go, oh Lord, that's got to be how painful it feels to get through a production and to finally reach that moment where you're like, oh, I have the production in my arms and it's good and everything's great. And then you send the production off to post-production to go to high school and college.
Yeah. It's not done yet until you go through marketing and distribution, right? It's like it's not done yet.
Actually, marketing is probably more like college because it's so expensive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is a good segue because, I wanted to ask you about focus and stuff, but, you recently completed a book. You're co-author of this book called the Guide to Managing Post-Production for Film, TV, and Digital, which so happens that, one of my maybe a few interviews ago with Kumari, right?
Mm-hmm.
You wrote the book with her, and with that, I want to talk about your decision to want to write something like this, right? What kind of focus it took. This is going to be a kind of layered question, but so what kind of focus it took, and what was your general mission as a woman in this industry, having to deal with so many different types of egos and pursuing this sort of work? What was that? What was that decision to want to make this book? I guess that's really the question. It's a 3-layer question, but I hope that all makes sense.
Yes, gotcha. Well, I blame Kumari. I think it's all her fault.
Yay!
Well, Kumari Bakaru, my one of my co-authors on the book, came to me and our other author, Susan Spohr. Susan is really big in the production world. She was a post-production supervisor on several big films and used to work for one of the big labs, and was an associate producer on several projects. And so she really had a handle on the post world. And I think for myself, it was bringing a little bit more of the production background into it, because the book actually covers everything from the pre-production stages or actually the prep stages of putting together a film, all the way through distribution. So it's really kind of from the start, and then kind of takes you through production, then editorial, then post-production, and then getting your deliverables together to get the film successfully distributed. I think our biggest hope with the book was to, there wasn't a lot out like this. And Susan actually had written a book on this previous, but it was mostly film centric. This was meant to bring people more into the digital world and to cover more of that. And there's something that happens, and I talked to the girls about this a lot during the process of writing the book. And one of the things that we felt was very, very important, and I felt was very, very important, was that mostly in the smaller project world, this doesn't happen so much in the big budget project world because there's so many different teams that kind of hand things off to each other and they take it on. In the indie world, and I'm sure you've witnessed this, there's not a lot of hand off to other people. You're doing everything.
That's
So
right.
what I was finding is that I was not only developing the content with the other producer and the team, I was very involved in the prep of it, the pre-production of it, the production, and then we would get to the end of production and everyone would just do the collapse. They would just fall apart. And all of a sudden, there was nobody to hand this off to. Nobody had, I mean, we might have had an editor on board, and then the editor's asking for, well, do you have this and do you have that? But we didn't really prepare ourselves for what deliverables, what masters that the editor would need. So now all of a sudden we're scrambling to transfer a bunch of content so that the editor has, the versions of everything he needs to do the offline. And then we're trying to figure out how to afford to do the online because we didn't bother to get a post-production company on board. So this was kind of in the early stages of producing. There was a lot of things that I was still learning about sort of the workflow of it all and making mistakes along the way. And I think the biggest mistake was not having a post-production house and the editor on board during production, because I felt like there's such a huge support system there, and you have your dailies going every day. We would maybe have an assistant editor who was, helping us process the dailies so we could look at them, but we didn't have that full team of people saying, okay, you really maybe want to think about, shooting this way or delivering it in this fashion at the end, because, and if you don't find that out until the very end, you deliver everything wrong, and the post house is having to scramble and spend money and time and assets to correct those problems at the end of it. And it becomes very expensive. And then you're trying to wheel and deal with the post houses to try and get those things done. So I think I learned a huge lesson, and I wanted that to be a big thing that I taught as part of the book, was get your post team on board at the start. Go and start getting bids from these houses, get them on board, make them a part of the team, make them feel like they're a part of the team so that they are as invested in your film as you are. They're in it from the beginning. And it doesn't mean you're paying them from the beginning because they're not necessarily doing anything, but you may have to make a phone call to one of them and saying, hey, we're about to shoot on this camera and with this, whatever, what's the best way to output this, or what should we be delivering to you to make this run smoother? Have the editor be a part of that conversation. So I think that is part of the most important part of that book, is to make sure that people understand that, so that there's not a gap. What happens is when there's a gap, you lose time. And all of a sudden you've got all this wonderful footage in the can and nothing to do with it. And then you start feeling hopeless, and you start losing interest, and people start going on to different projects, and you start losing people. And it is very, very hard to get yourself remotivated to move forward if you start losing that in the middle. It's like, I always call it the, where movies go to die, is that it's that moment that production wraps, and then all of a sudden there's this void between, editorial, or there's a void between editorial and post. Somewhere in there, a year goes by and you still have no film, or sometimes 2 years goes by and you don't have a film. So, and this is why you budget for these things. That's why, you want that to be part of your budget, and you want that to be part of, everyone says, well, I'm just going to finish the film. I'm just going to finish shooting the film and then I'll worry about the rest of it later. Well, you can't do that, because if you do that, then you're waiting years. You have to raise the rest of the money. That's way harder, to do.
And that's where a lot of people make mistakes, right? Filmmakers make
Yes.
mistakes where they think that if they segment the costs, right, in a way,
Yeah.
and go about it like that. That's when, like you were saying, the gap is the sort of the opening of this vacuum where you just it's
kills,
open.
it kills the energy.
It sucks everything up. It sucks everything up.
It does. And your film just sits there and you're thinking, am I ever going to finish this? And some people don't. I've known people that have never finished their project because of that. So it really does. It matters, It matters doing it right. And I had heard people say that on bigger films, but they always had, they always had
Funds.
this team of people, and they had the funds.
Right.
So I was always thinking, okay, well, yeah, of course you're going to say that, because you have the means to do it. These other people don't have the funding to do that. They only have enough money to shoot the film, and they want to go ahead and get it in the can. And I get that. I mean, there's sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to shoot when you have to shoot, for weather,
right,
for time of year, for availability, for the actors, for the availability of the crew. Sometimes you just don't have a choice. You got to get it in the can. But I would be doing everything I possibly can to have some kind of team on board that is part of the post process, either a post-production supervisor or somebody from that post world that can help guide you along the way and help you make the right decisions in order to finish your film quickly.
Yeah.
And not have that hiccup in between.
Yeah, a cool question. Because I haven't been in the studio system yet, and so I've been just doing independence, right? And so, in your opinion, what's harder? What's more challenging? I mean, obviously, making a film is challenging. Period. So let's just take that out. But what's more challenging at the end of the day? Is it studio films or is it independent films?
Independent films.
Yeah. Why is that? I'm curious.
Money mostly, and time. I think that because you have more crew, you have more budget, you have more access to things. You're not making all the when you're doing an independent film, everything is on you. And I've been on one film. I've been the line producer, the UPM, sometimes the AD, the post-production supervisor, I've sat in with the editor and literally had a couch in the room that I could sleep on in between editing sessions. Yep. So I didn't do the editing, but I would sit in with those people, and it is a lot on a person. And I've had really great other producers who've done the same, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And when you're on a larger studio production, and it's not that it's not difficult, but it's a whole different kind of difficult. And you have a lot more support system than you would on an independent film. But there's a lot more, I think there's also a lot of camaraderie on an independent film. Like you feel like you're guerrilla shooting, you're in it together. There are people work their butts off and they stay long hours, and I always felt bad about being that person that says, we're going to go a little later than expected. If I get you guys a little extra money and some pizza, or, we're going to order in from this restaurant or something. I know they hate pizza. Crews hate pizza, but
they hate pizza. It's literally death food. Like
it is. They're like, oh, it's going to kill our energy. I learned that too. That was one of the big things that I learned was don't get pizza, because I would have crew come up to me and they'd say, look, we'll stay past the 10 hours or 12 hours or 16 hours or whatever, but no pizza. And I say, whatever you want, just write it down, tell me where to go, and I'm going to get it. But I did learn that. And I was very fortunate on some projects where my I said my mom was involved in the food, and she would make everything homemade. So there wasn't a lot of heavy carbs. There wasn't a lot of, you got to take care of your crew. That is one thing that I feel 100% animate about, is you got to take care of your crew, because if you don't, they just fall apart,
I mean, they're in the trenches. They're in the trenches, man.
They're the ones doing all the heavy lifting. They're the ones, literally, these guys don't sit down. These girls don't sit down. They're busting their butts all day long. And if you don't feed them right and you don't take care of them, it's not fair. And I've seen other crews, other shows where it's been a struggle, and I'm thinking, I see these bagels and donuts and sugary crap, carby stuff, and I'm like, I'm not having that table and on my sets. My table is, if I have to go out and do the shopping every day, my table is going to have fruits and vegetables and easy to grab, like cheese and protein. And, you got to take care of your crew, and you got to walk around and tell them, thank you. You're doing such a great job. Great job, guys.
Goes such a long way. Appreciation.
It does. It really does. And I feel so big on that. And, when I was working with the Laemmle studio situation, we talked about that with Carl Laemmle's family was a part of it. And they would tell me stories about how Carl used to walk around Universal Studios as it was being put together. And they were constructing all the different parts of Universal and what it would become. And he would sleep there. He would stay there, and he would walk around and talk to the crews and pat them on the back and have conversations and sit there and chat with them. And I think, you got to build that rapport with people. I know you're not always going to get along with people, but I think that you've got to show appreciation and you've got to show gratitude, because, no one's ever making enough money. No one's ever making what they're worth,
Right.
And I will be one to say, as a producer, you're never, unless you're on one of the big shows as a producer, you're not really making a lot as an independent producer.
Right.
So you're kind of all in it together, and you want to make sure the crew feels that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely top bottom, right? Top down, right? That appreciation, I mean, there's a saying where, like, news doesn't go bottom up, it goes top down, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the same thing where you as a leader, I guess you would say, a leader in the production, like, you have to set the tone of how this production is going to run. And if you're a bad apple, then, man, no one's going to be happy. I mean, we've heard stories, and I've experienced a couple. I've seen it, but it's definitely not in the realm of the last few months, when certain things have materialized from certain producers, large producers, right? So, it comes down to really appreciating the people that you're working together with, and there's no ego. I think ego really destroys camaraderie.
Absolutely.
And also, it's just it's sour milk, essentially.
Well, you said the word team, and that's really what it is. And if you're not working together as a team, and they don't feel like they're part of the team and you're part of the team, then it really isn't a well-functioning set, I don't think. And I've been, that was something that was really important to me. I tend to try to gravitate or work with directors who are that way too. Right. I don't like to work with directors and I've worked with a couple and I didn't work with them again, who separate themselves from the crew. They only talk to the upper, A-list cast, and they walk in like there's some ownership of of everything and everyone, and I don't appreciate it. I don't like that kind of ego. I would prefer to work with someone who's like, hey, Bill, how's it going today? Hey,
Yeah.
um, Stacy, good job on that, whatever. So it's not that everybody has to remember everyone's name. It's tough to do that because there's a lot of crew, but I appreciate the ones who actually strike up a conversation,
Yeah.
who talk to the crew when they're saying, hey, can I get this light over here or move this, get this boom out of here. And can you move this over here and put the camera here? Let's talk about it in a way that we all feel like we're working together to achieve your vision.
Right.
Don't talk to them like, get that out of the way and move that thing and get that,
Right.
it just, there's no need to be that way.
Yeah. I mean, when you start to apply authoritarianism, right, as a part,
Mhm.
as opposed to egalitarianism, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the difference, really. I mean, when we can look at things in an egalitarian way, then that's how I feel like a production should be run.
Mhm.
Is that if you're a PA and you have an idea for a shot, obviously you don't want to interfere with the director's like vision, right? But like if there's a camaraderie and you feel like there's a good hey, this is a shot that I feel like this might work, and the PA suggests it, like and it's up to obviously it's up to the director to say yes or no. And if the director's ego is not in the way and able to accept that, right,
Mhm.
then that helps build not just camaraderie, but it also helps build confidence, right, and it
Yes.
helps build a good society, and it really just
Yeah,
comes down to right.
absolutely.
I kind of want to bounce back just a little bit because
Yeah, there was something you asked earlier that I didn't really cover. I don't know if this is what you're going to, but
well. I mean, maybe it is, but let's see if it is. If it's not,
okay.
then we'll conjoin it. But you were talking about having the gap, right?
Mhm.
So in production, if you're boom, money, first part of money's in, you're going, and then boom, you feel a gap in during post, and that's when things die down. So, but during development and between development and actually pre-production, right?
Mhm.
There's a raising of the funds in independent side of things, right? And you've already spent all that time, like all that time, just really, gaining momentum, and raising the funds is the last thing to do, right?
Mhm.
So with how do you not lose your momentum and your focus, during that sort of downtime?
Right. Well, I think in development, it's all about mostly about getting the script right. So a lot of the focus is on let's get this material good, let's get it great, let's get it ready to shoot. And so it's a lot of working with the writers, a lot of working with the director if they're on board and reading it, and then it's maybe even if if the script is at that point, maybe it's reaching out to actors and talent. There's a lot of exciting pieces of that happen in that pre or that development to pre-production phase, and you get excited. You just kind of keep working towards it, knowing that at some point the money's going to be there. You think, okay, well, when the script is good enough and I've got this actor attached and I've got this director attached, and I have my schedule worked out, and the breakdown of the script done, and I know exactly how many days I'm going to need somebody, or the budget done. A lot of it is creative thinking, and to me that's one of the funnest parts of it all.
Yeah.
So you're not so worried about I don't know, maybe I'm sure other people disagree and think differently, because there are several line producer people that think more analytical. They're more like, give me my check, I do the
Yeah.
work, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But I have worked on projects where that doesn't happen until production happens. You know, you're not going to see a dime until budget is locked. You've got it in escrow, and now everybody's starting to get paid. You just have to have faith in it. You
Yeah.
have to believe it's going to happen, and you work as if it's going to happen. I think you set boundaries for yourself so that you don't get tired and you don't get burnt and you don't feel like you're getting taken advantage of. You set boundaries for yourself and you say, okay, this is how much time you get today. This is how
Yeah.
much of my time you get during this production. If it's my own, I'm working day and night. I don't have
Yeah.
any
Right.
boundaries. But if
Right.
if I'm working for someone else and that money isn't there yet, I make sure that everything's in writing.
Yeah.
I don't start anything until stuff is in writing. And I learned that the hard way because, you know, things get messed up in conversation and the verbal agreements just don't stick. Because even if you're the best of friends, but I told you this. No, you told me this. No. This is what I told you. So this saves friendships. It saves collaborations. Always have something in writing at the start, so you know exactly where you stand. You have your titles worked out in that agreement. You either get a deal memo or some kind of contract, and you know what your title is. You know how much you're getting paid. You know when you're getting paid, when the money's secured. So I think a lot of that helps the foundation of being able to let go of that you know, where you get a little bit of not fear, but you start to feel like, oh, I don't trust that person.
Right.
But you have it in writing, so you know if this project happens, they're going to pay you. They're going to do everything they can to make this work. Now,
Right.
whether or not the project's going to actually happen, you do a lot of work going into prep. You have to believe that the project's going to happen. Sometimes it does, and many times it doesn't. You know.
Right. Right.
And then sometimes it's going to happen now, but then it doesn't. But then 2 years from now, you get a phone call from somebody saying, "Hey, remember when we were going to do that movie? Well, guess what? We're going to go ahead and do it now." So I think there just has to be a lot of faith in the project and faith in the team that's working on it. And it's not always easy. You know, sometimes you feel like you're putting in a lot of effort and maybe you don't know what the other people are doing on the other side of it. So you just have to, and the same goes with writing together, whether that's writing a script together or a book together. That process, you have to trust in the process, and you have to trust the people you're working with or writing with, that's happening and that they're doing the work that needs to go into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a producer, this is why you know there's so many projects that are being in development or in pre-production, right? It's because if we focus on one thing, you drive ourselves crazy. First of all, right? You know, because like you have no idea how the dynamic of the and the direction of how this thing is going to go. So we tend to say, okay, cool, you know, let's develop this, or let's write a book, or let's start a podcast, right?
Oh,
yeah.
You have several. I actually have that happening right now. Kamari and Susan are working on our second book together while I'm consulting doing producing consulting on a project in Massachusetts. And you know, you know, you do your best. And then I'm working on a project for another producer in Texas who wants to shoot in New York. So, you know, there's a lot of irons in the fire. Yeah. And then once the one hooks and you know, okay, the money's there and we're going, then kind of everything else falls away. But you do as much on those projects to get them ready in the meantime. Yeah, definitely. You're right. You do have to have a lot of irons in the fire. You can't just rely on the one project, and you have to make money, especially if you have a family. You got to make money while doing other projects. And I used to supplement that with post-production, and COVID kind of, you know, stepped on that one a little bit. But it's you know, you try to find things to supplement that. You know,
so I totally agree with you. You know, like you know, having faith and patience. I'm sorry. This is so funny to me because I have to let the audience know that we literally took a quick pee break, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
then now I can't stop laughing about that or thinking about that. But
I actually took a Pop-Tart break. I took a bite of a Pop-Tart, get my sugar going.
did you really? Okay.
It was very
Oh man,
delicious.
I bet. I miss Pop Tarts. Pop
Oh my gosh.
Tarts.
I have been living, I don't know, for some reason, pandemic life, I have been living on Pop Tarts ever since the lockdown happened. There's something
Really?
about the ease of them, I guess, that you can just like take
Nostalgia.
them, and the nostalgia. Yeah. And
Yeah.
but only the cinnamon ones. What is that? Cinnamon, brown sugar, cinnamon, something or
Cinnamon brown
other.
sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the only ones I do.
Wow, there's something. It's something lodged into your subconscious, which makes that the it factor, right?
Yeah, like Oreos too. Oreos, because that's like such a kid thing. And I never used to eat Oreos at all. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Really? Huh?
It's
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm a rice person. Like I'd
Oh,
literally
yeah,
like
love rice.
making rice every single day, and I had to
Oh yeah.
stop. I had to stop because I was going through. I'm getting myself ready for a cleanse, but I was going through stiff hands, and
Oh,
I just felt icky afterwards, and yeah, you have to take a break from rice, especially
yeah.
if you're just eating pure rice without any leafy greens or stuff like that. But but yeah, anyhow, going back to the conversation of having faith and patience. Yeah, I definitely agree that you have to keep yourself busy. The patience is extremely important, and absolute faith is one of those things that we have to carry with us to continue. Um, you know, you, I want to also sort of dive into your area of maybe struggle with because as a female filmmaker, we it's been known, right, that female filmmakers have struggled tremendously in this business. Me as a minority, which I hate the word minority because I'm like, dude, I'm a human being, man. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
the word minority, but because it is,
Yeah.
we go through these struggles of I don't want to say unfairness because every single person has their unfair ability advantage, right? But because you were saying something about earlier about like you have actor friends that have 2 to 3 minutes on a show and that's all it is. Those are certain struggles, but specifically with you, what sort of struggles have you personally gone through, that you would like to kind of really see shift in the paradigm today?
Yeah, I think that's what one of the things that you had mentioned earlier, as being an author and writing about this industry as a woman in the industry, because we didn't really write the book as there was no focus on it as we're women in the industry. It was just, here's the industry, so we didn't really touch too much on that, although we have talked about that. Should we write a book from our point of view and the things that we've been through, because all three of the authors, myself and Kamari and Susan, have all had moments in our careers where we've had to face that issue. And I never, especially as a younger woman, I never really um, focused on it too much, or tried to put too much weight on any of that. Uh, I guess, like, as an actress, I always had problems because I'm only 5 feet tall. So I
Mm,
never got considered for anything except for teenager roles. Like, okay, you're going to come in and play so and so's best friend, even though I was like 20 years old, and this
right.
person was 12, or I did, like, stand in work or stunt work for actors who were, little kids, like 10-year-olds. So that was frustrating. But on the production side of it, I have to say that I mean, to be honest, in the beginning, I had so much support. And I don't know why that was, because I knew so many women in the industry who didn't. I talked to them daily. I had friends, I had colleagues that would just say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this," or "I can't believe they treated me like this because I'm a woman," or "They said this thing to me," or they disrespected me, or took advantage of me. Like I heard those stories so many times, and I've seen it firsthand. I had a lot of male support coming up through, and I think it's because a lot of them saw me as more of a little sister. I
Mm.
swear I felt like that was the case a lot of times, and there was less. I had less of an issue with people being, or men being disrespectful or hurtful as colleagues. I had guys helping me find jobs. I had but I busted my butt. I was like a bulldog on set. I actually had that nickname on several shows
Mm.
because I was like this little tornado that would come in and I would kill myself all day. I never stopped working. I worked as hard as I could. I worked probably that would be the one thing I would say is that I probably worked twice as hard as the guys did because I felt like I was constantly having to prove myself and my worth. But I almost felt like it was overkill because it was more to prove it to myself than it was to those guys because I
Mm.
felt like they already believed in me and they were already willing to. I had men walk off of sets because I was mistreated on a set
Mm.
and shut down a production for half a day because I was being mistreated on a set. And ironically, the person who was mistreating me and abusing me on the set was a woman.
Mm.
So but I think that comes from, and I've seen this time and time again, women have to fight so hard for, or at the time, I don't know if it's still the case. I don't know that that's necessarily still the case today. I don't think so. But they've had to fight so hard for everything that they had during that period of time that they held on to it so tight and were so defensive to other women because they felt like they were going to move in on their territory
Mm.
and take it from them. Oh, well, I get to be the only woman on this set, or I get to, there's only one woman that gets to work on a set, so it's going to be me. You
That's like
know,
that's like the token person syndrome, right?
it is,
Right.
and I felt like there was a lot of that going on. Where okay, we're only going to hire two women on this production, and so the two women are like,
Yeah.
ironically, as a producer, I work with mostly only women. I mean, not purposefully. Like my DPs are always, usually men. I've worked with DPs that are women. I've worked with, but a lot of the producers, a lot of the writers, a lot of the directors, a lot of the crew, a lot of them are women, and it just happened to be that way. It wasn't like I went out of my way to say I'm only hiring women because I don't roll that way. I think it's important to be to hire the right people and
Right.
to hire the team that's going to get it done and that you enjoy working with. That being said, a lot of our crews and a lot of our productions have been very diverse in front of camera and behind the camera. But I always believe that needs to be organic.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and like, okay, we have one of these and we've got one of that, and
Yeah.
let's jot it down and make it a thing. um, I don't believe in that. I think you put together the right crew and the right team and the right people, and it just comes together. Uh, but yeah, as a woman, I felt pretty supported by the men that I worked with coming up through the ranks. I did have some smarmy producers that I worked for who were a little bit, um, they weren't so much to me. Again, everybody kind of felt like I was a little sister. So
Mm.
they tried to kind of mind their P's and Q's around me. But
Mm.
I would see the smarm when it would come to other women or to other people, even that would come in. I just, there was a level of oh, I need a shower after I leave here. I did witness some of that, and a lot of those shows I didn't stay on. I
Yeah.
wasn't comfortable, and I was like, I don't have to put up with this. You don't have to put up with this. and
It's
most
so,
of
yeah.
these people left. They just didn't. But at the time, you couldn't say, I'm not going to put up with this. My fellow, women or my fellow people are going to come and stand up for me and have my back, and we're all going to walk off set together. That kind of stuff just didn't happen a lot. Films weren't, there wasn't a cancel culture. There wasn't like, oh, we're going to shut you down if you don't treat people right.
Right.
It's like I would complain to somebody, oh, I'm getting mistreated or I'm getting abused on this project, and they would say, well, quit.
Yeah.
Okay, but why can't I get the person who's being the asshole fired?
Right. Right.
Well, because they're making us money, and you can't get them fired. There was a director producer guy in particular who was a piece of work, and he was well known for being a player and for his treatment of women. And I witnessed it only in the fact that I was working in visual effects on a project. Worked on several movies in the visual effects department, and this particular person came in, and they said, when this person comes in, you don't look at them, you don't speak to them, you don't look in their direction. This was only said to the women. This
Wow.
was not said. And they said the only women that talk to this guy are his, eye candy that he, rides around in
Wow.
his fancy cars with and stuff.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, really? and it was that way. He came in, and all the other women sort of diverted to other areas or just had nothing to do with them. And, I could tell the one woman who did get a chance to speak to him that he just didn't take her seriously.
Wow.
Susan, who we worked with on the book, she had an incident where somebody actually told her, we don't want you on this. We wanted a man. So,
Wow.
And people didn't have a problem saying that kind of stuff back then. They just
Right.
didn't have an issue. There was no, they call, what is it? Why am I spacing on this? Different companies have their own HR department, human resources department. But I always found if you complained to human resources, it protected the company more so than it protected the employee.
Yeah.
So, and again, the major problems that I had were women who were protecting their turf, and they decided that I was a threat and made my life absolute hell through the entire production. To the point where at one point, like I said, some of these guys walked off set. They said, until this person is either restrained or given some kind of rule to stay away from her, then we're going to put the hold on this whole thing, and you're not going to shoot another piece of footage until she's treated with some kind of respect. And
Yeah.
I was nobody. I was like a little, peon in the rung of it all. So
Yeah.
I was very surprised.
I mean, it almost sounds like, I mean, how can you not, in a way, like unconsciously, right? Unconsciously sometimes fight with the person that you feel like you're in competition with. I'm not saying that everybody does this, right? But
I had empathy for her. I had
Right.
empathy for other women who I worked with in different arenas who I could tell were viciously protecting their territory. I could understand why they were doing that.
Right. But it's literally like for the men, at least, right? Like for the men, you had, each man would get a bone, but for the women, it was like, one bone for 20 people, 20 women. Right.
Yeah.
Of course, that mentality of scarcity, in a way, is going to surface up. And, that's what I sort of feel like, where, I mean, if we depend, that's what it really comes down to. If we depend if we put all our eggs in one basket, right, that's what it's going to feel like, because your hopes and dreams of trying to attain a certain level of success, right, doesn't work out because you put all your eggs in one basket, as opposed to something that goes, you know what, I'm going to start to test out all different types of areas to see what works best for me, rather than focus on one thing. I mean, listen, of course you have people that focus on one thing, and the universe green lights it, and and says this is the right path to go, continue going on. But there's a certain time where that green light's going to turn into yellow or eventually red, and you have to take another route.
Yeah.
Right?
A lot of this business, you're reinventing yourself. Actors who start off as actors may end up finding themselves as directors later on in life, or different crew, move to different areas, your interests change. You may get out of the business altogether. I think a lot of it is, you have to pivot. You have to be able to pivot and change your idea of what you want. Sometimes you don't always get exactly what you started out wanting.
Right.
So it does. Sometimes it's harder than others because you really don't want to let go of the thing that maybe wasn't working for you. And it's hard to be told constantly that you're never going to get there, or you're not going to have this, or you're not going to get this because of this. And It has nothing to do with your abilities. It has nothing to do with your talents. It has everything to do with, look, I have my guy. I like working with this guy, or I feel comfortable working with the dude, or this buddy of mine. And so you can't, it's hard to fight that battle. It's not necessarily that they're all bad people or all bad intentions, but it is frustrating that, you're fighting an uphill battle at every turn because someone's already got you figured out, or they think they have you figured out. Well, you're a woman, so you're probably going to be emotional, and you're probably going to be difficult to work with, and you're probably not going to want to put in the hours, or you probably have a kid somewhere that you have to take care of. There's all this baggage that comes with you as a woman that I think guys maybe just assume right straight out the gate that aren't necessarily true.
Right.
I know
Right.
men, I know just as many men who go home and have a fit, or, or maybe they're a single dad, or maybe, maybe the mom and the dad are working, and both of them have equal responsibilities. So it's, there's a lot of assumption, I think, that was coming with being a woman. I don't know that necessarily happens as much anymore. I think that there's a lot of fight that's been had to change perceptions and to change that rule and
Right.
those assumptions. I don't know that I know on paper and it looks good, but does it actually happen in real life?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, in a way, dinosaurs dying, right? You're going to have that remnants of dinosaurs dying, right? And, there's
that's
this
definitely happening.
Yeah, so there's this new generation of filmmakers, and even just a culture that is so different from what's been going on in the past, especially the last 30 to 40 years, right? I mean, who's this lady that? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, a lot changed, I think, in the evolution of moving from film to digital. You had a lot of old school producers, directors, writers who, well, not writers so much, but you had a lot of this old school type of ideal that couldn't they couldn't pivot with that idea. Because once things started going more digital, it got cheaper, budgets got less. You still have the blockbuster, big summer movies, big blockbuster hero films and stuff. But I think there's a lot more independent, and there's a lot less middle of the road, where you were having 60 million, $80 million, $100 million films left and right. And you would be sitting on set going, where's the money going on this?
Yeah.
Where's the budget going? And craft service? Like, what the hell? And, but people were getting paid ridiculous amounts of money, and now that's not happening. So you think, okay, well, the people who really care about the process, maybe they are going to hang on and continue to work through it and try to learn that new digital process and learn the new streaming platforms and navigate that. Whereas before it was very stick to your guns, everything's film, everything is, and there's nothing wrong with either one. I love film. I worked in film a lot, had my hands on, 35 millimeter and 16 millimeter. And so I get why that is so important to maintain and to hold on to, but you have to pivot. You have to change with the times, and you have to be willing to change how you tell stories. That also is huge right now, especially after the last couple of years with working with the LGBT community, working with different diversities, trying to tell stories that transcend what you know and understand, as a culture. I think you got to get past that. You have to kind of be willing to shift your storytelling a bit.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think you just said it too. You have to get past it because, whatever stigma that people put on you or label that people put on you, that doesn't define you, right? It's their own definition of who they think you are, but deep down inside, we know who we are. So that literally gives us the opportunity to break through. And if we do have that focus and perseverance of wanting to break through, that desire to, I mean, and I'm not talking about fame or high levels of success. I'm just talking about taking it day by day, one day at a time of success, right? Of
Get your story told.
Yeah,
Getting
exactly.
your story told. And all these people that are so angry and bitter, that are, I think, more old school, or maybe still trying to hold on to that old idea.
It still happens today too. It still happens.
It does.
Today.
It does.
Yeah.
And I hear people bitch about it, and in all facets, not just filmmaking.
Yeah.
But get over it, because
right.
Some people have never had a chance in their life to tell their story. They've never had that opportunity ever. And they're like, why is it so important all of a sudden that all these stories get, and every time I turn on the TV, it's about this or it's about that, or I'm streaming this and there's all these shows on about this person and that ideal and that background. And it's different from me. And I'm thinking, yeah, maybe this is because it wouldn't be hitting you like a ton of bricks if this had been going on forever, like it should have been. Right. There's never been more of an opportunity for more of a diverse situation where everybody's getting a chance to kind of tell their stories.
Right.
And like you said, it's not about fame or money necessarily, although that would be nice to have the money part of it, not necessarily the fame. They can keep that. But I think it's very, very important that everybody get a chance to, anyone who's interested in getting to that level and willing to put in the work, get to a point where they can tell their stories. Right. If we only hear one story, wouldn't that be boring?
Right. Exactly.
I don't want to see the same story over and over and over again, which has been kind of the way of the world. Enough already. Like, I want to hear some stories I haven't heard yet. I want to hear from different people and different types of people, Right. I just don't, I think that it's important to have those different voices because it makes a better, well-rounded world, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, melting pot, if you will, or, become a global citizen, if you will. Right. Yeah. I absolutely 1000% agree. We're living in an age where every single person can start a podcast, right? Every single person can start a YouTube channel and do whatever they do. The trick is now that because the audience is more advanced, right? As opposed to 10 years ago, where, if you put out, a cell phone video of yourself doing crazy things, people just tripped out about it, right? but these days, you have to have, going back to curating and designing what you're putting out there to have it eye-catchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to create that hook point. Like, I'm reading this book right now by Brendan Keane called Hook Point, and he talks about the first 3 seconds of a video on Instagram or on YouTube. However you can get the attention of that of a person, of those eyes. And it's so true, because you can literally study this stuff and it's free, right? And you can go to the library. You don't have to buy the book. You can just go to the library and just borrow the book and learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then figure out, okay, how am I going to create something where you can get the attention of the eyes, and it's all experimental. It's all experimental right now.
Yeah, I think you touch on a really important point too. It's about education, catching people early on and letting them know that, I think a lot of, I don't know, myself as a kid, as a teenager, or, trying to make home movies or trying to make like little projects with friends and stuff. I never thought, wow, nobody told me, okay, you can do this. It's possible, but you need to learn these things in order to make yourself a success. And I think the problem is there's no one sort of catching people early on in the process. Yeah, you get into college and you start studying film in college, and I don't want this to sound like negative against any programs or anything, because there's some really great ones out there. But you find that you're competing against your fellow students to be the director, or you're competing against your fellow students to have the opportunity to write or edit or do these things. And there's a limited capacity of, okay, we have to do the student project at the end of the year. We only can have one director. We can only have one editor. We can only have one gaffer or whatever. So you feel like you're maybe stuck in a position that you wanted to really learn how to do that, but now it's limited. So you are now learning this instead. And that's not always the case, but I find that sometimes that happens. And so as a younger person trying to get a leg up, you're maybe told early on, well, okay, you're not going to be that person. So why don't you just learn this for now and make your way and just do the best you can and just get through, just graduate, just get through it. And I think that if you catch people at an earlier age, like even as far back as maybe high school, and that's the problem too. High schools have all cut their extracurricular. There's they're cutting home ec even, and gym and all these important classes that people need to learn how to function in like everyday life and to get in shape and to feel healthy. You have a lot of these programs getting cut, and I'm sure theater and music and all of that's going to be, if it's not already, on the chopping block. And to me, theater was a really great way to sort of get introduced into that world. And I think they should have film classes. I think they should be introducing kids on how to use this, because young people are so smart these days. They are brilliant. And they pick up stuff so easy. I mean, you have 2-year-olds learning how to run an iPad, better than I could ever have done.
Yeah, my son, like, he knows how to, when you have a notification, he knows how to do that. He knows how to zoom in, zoom out. And I'm like, man, this is so
they
simple.
Are brilliant, like scarily little crazy, brilliant people. But I think that if you put a camera in a kid's hand, and they do have programs, that they, I think the Oscars even has an award that they give to young filmmakers. I think they had some kind of program going a few years back. I think not the Golden Globes. Who was it? I shouldn't even mention the Golden Globes. Curse on you. What is it? The BAFTAs, I think, had a program for young filmmakers where they encourage people or kids to take up and I'm not talking about, YouTube videos are a great way for, if that's what you have access to, go and make your own series and pick up a camera and start filming. I think you tell your story however you can tell it, whenever you can tell it, whether you have money, you don't have money, find a way to tell your story, even if you just are writing it in notebooks until you can figure out how to get it into a better structure. But
well, that's a privilege, right? That's a privilege, right? In order to have that privilege of not having any money and forcing yourself to be creative and find that way, and how you can actually complete this project, whether it's good or not, it doesn't really matter, right? At the end, obviously, you want to have a good story, but if you're a novice, if you're a 12-year-old trying to create something, it's not about it's not about
go well. They turn out crappy, especially your first one out the gate. Sometimes you have to just think, okay, this is a write-off. This is my is my learning curve. This is my learning process. Sometimes it turns out really, really good, and then sometimes it's I think there's a story about Jim Cameron that he directed. What was it? There was a horror film or something, monster movie that he directed, and it didn't go very well.
Right. With I think what's his name? What's the producer? B producer King. What's his name again?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, it's right there. I can see his face. Corman.
Oh, yeah, so Roger Corman. Right. Gosh, man, I don't even know why I blanked on that, but I think it was one of those, right?
Yeah, and he locked himself in the closet with the footage because he wouldn't let go of it, and he was saying, "No, it's mine." But there's all kinds of stories like that where it just didn't work out for the person on their first go around. But sometimes you get very lucky, but again, I think it's all about doing the research, knowing as much as you can with what you have available. But on our side of it, it's making more available to to those communities, to younger kids, to I did a class with for a couple of years with a really dear friend of mine who's an actress, producer, director, writer, everything. And she and I did this course for this film festival, and it was for inner city youth, and they would come in over a weekend, and the first day they would learn writing and creating a story, and then they would start formulating how they were going to, is this an interior? Is this an exterior? What's the shot look like? And they would draw little pictures of how they were going to shoot it. And then the next day they would come in with their plan, and they knew how they were going to do it. And each person took an opportunity to run the camera. One person would direct, the other person would light it, the other person would hold the boom and run the sound. So each kid took turns, and then we would start another shot, and they would change around, and each person took a turn learning that process. So it was really, they loved it. The kids absolutely loved it. They got to run around San Pedro and kind of the surrounding area and shoot the local scenes. And San Pedro opened up their local shops and in different areas of town to allow these kids to come in and film. And I loved that. I thought that was such a great opportunity, and I wish there was more of that being offered. And I know there are summer courses and different extracurricular things that are being offered throughout the year, different places, but I don't know, directly many of those opportunities that exist.
Right.
Especially in certain cities and inner city,
Yeah. I mean, I think what we've talked about before, that we have more accessibility with information like this. So, I mean, if a kid really does want to do something, I mean, we have the iPhone now, right? Or a smartphone, whatever phone. But we have, there's a camera on this thing. We can go out. We can do anything that we want now. We can look up information. The World Wide Web, right? I mean, it's the internet is just so inundated with so much good information. You just have to filter through it, and also to add to the fact of looking for teachers, mentors, right? I think when we have that desire to meet somebody and talk to them and learn from them, that's a whole nother level of experience that can be downloaded into the child or the novice's mind, so that they can really excel better, right?
It's about building confidence. The biggest thing a filmmaker needs is confidence, and confidence without ego. It's about knowing that you have as much of the knowledge that you need, and knowing if you don't know it, to bring on a team that does know it, and to accept, I don't know this, so I'm leaning on this team of people who know this. I mean, that's a huge part of being a producer is, I don't know all there is to know about. I couldn't tell you what that light is or that,
Right. Right.
But
exactly.
I can tell you that my gaffer sure as heck does, and my grips know what they're doing, and my lighting and electricians know what they're doing. So it's knowing that, okay, I trust you. I know that you know what you're doing. I brought you on for a reason, and we're a team, and you know the kind of shot I'm looking for. And I know that the light's not hitting it just right. So we're going to work together to achieve that. But I think you have to have some knowledge of at least the basics of filmmaking if you want to grow into being a successful filmmaker. But there are just as amazing creative YouTube videos that were shot on people's iPhones, that were shot on tablets or whatever people had access to. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, shoot, if you have a tablet or you have an iPhone and you have an idea and you don't have any money, figure out what you can shoot that makes sense with that, maybe somebody knows how to put on makeup, so they're going to do a tutorial on how to put your makeup on right. That's good. But if you want to tell a story, get your friends together. Okay, what do you know what to do? And what do you know what to do? And how do do you know how to light? Okay, you're going to be the lighter. Do you know how to, shoot the project and know what it's supposed to look like? Okay, you're the DP and you know how to run this camera. So I think it's like getting a team together with different strengths and just putting something together. We used to do that with our friends, and we would figure out, we'd have these big cameras that we would borrow from school. And we would just go out and shoot these ridiculous videos. And we thought it made sense at the time. And then we would put them together and we're like, oh my gosh, this is just not good. But, you do the best you can. There was a film a few years ago, I'm going to forget the name of it, but there was a film that was completely shot on an iPhone, and it was nominated for like the Independent Spirit Award. I think it might have.
Are you talking about what was Tangerine?
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Tangerine was. I think that was shot on an iPhone 6, and I forget the director's name, but yeah, I mean, at the end
today are crazy. You can
insane, right?
And you can do all kinds of stuff that you couldn't do before.
I mean, I'm on an 8 right now, but people are talking about the 12 and how amazing it is. And there's even a possibility now that you don't even need a filter for that. I mean, I recently saw a short film that Apple promoted, and it was a short film. It was a really good short film. Oh my gosh, man. I just thought, I didn't realize it was shot on an iPhone until it was, realized it was on the Apple site, but YouTube site. And I just thought, wow, like how in the world did they get this to look like this, right? Yeah. And just with the iPhone. So I mean, there's so many amazing possibilities, Dave. Don, I know wow. I mean, we've talked a long time.
I know. I hope I haven't overdone your podcast.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I just don't want to. I know we talked about a certain amount of time, and I
You know,
I'm enjoying this conversation, really.
I do too. I know we could probably talk when I get talking to filmmakers, I get so excited, especially when it comes
Yeah,
to education. And
yeah,
I will say one more thing. If somebody is kind of kicking themselves because they only have this to film with, or they only have this camera, or they only have this phone, or this or that, film it, shoot it how you see it happening. And if you're not 100% loving like the coloring or the this grain or whatever, that's what, you work with color timers, because everything is so much cheaper now. You can go to someone who is a really great color correctionist and get them to fix things, get them to tweak the color, and if you want your background, your sky to be a different color, there's a lot of ways to fix that inexpensively. If you have to shoot with a green screen, become friends with a visual effects person who can, inexpensively go on their computer and get it done. I'm sure the visual effects houses are loving that one.
yeah.
But
Hey, it's the name of the game, man. It's
I
the name
think
of the
that
game.
softwares are and computers and different things are offering more opportunity to people than there have been in the past, because you have very, very limited options. But I think there's a way to very inexpensively get a project done if you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. 1000%. If there was one thing that you would like to leave, and it sounds like that was the one thing that you wanted to leave the listeners with, but if there's one thing that you could leave the listeners with, in terms of, persevering and struggling and overcoming all this stuff, what would that one thought be?
I would say probably don't give up, which I know is very hard at times. It's very frustrating, but have faith in yourself and your ability, and just educate yourself. Do the research, do the time, put the time in, and surround yourself with people who are supportive and encouraging. Sometimes I thrived on the people who told me I couldn't do it, because I was like, well, I'll show you. And I did it, but it's so much easier. It's so much less work if you have a team of people you can work with throughout the process. That's why people partner up and continue to work with for 20, 30 years, because they have that trust. And if you can find it and build it. But if you have a story to tell it, whether you write it, whether you find a way to shoot it on your iPhone, whether you find a way to put it on YouTube or Vimeo or Snapchat, whatever, find a way to do it. There are ways to do it. You just have to get on Google and research it. How do I do this? How do I put this together? I wish there was more opportunities and more classes and more mentorship available. And I think that is starting to happen. But until that happens, figure out a way, ask questions, find people in your vicinity to reach out to and say, I want to shadow you. I want you to be my mentor. I want you to teach me because I love your work, or I really like what you're doing. Even if it's like you want to learn how to grip or be an electrician, go and find a gaffer in your area, or a key grip, and work directly with them. Get a couple of if you're kids, you're probably not going to be able to get a gig, but you might be able to shadow or have them mentor you and show you some things, teach you what the equipment is. But mentorship's very important. I think that's a huge step in getting the knowledge that you need to move forward in the industry.
Agreed. Do you have any social media links or anything that you'd like to plug, so that if someone wanted to get in touch with you and maybe have a chat with you?
Sure. I'm at Dawn Higgy, DAWNHIGGI on Instagram and Twitter. And I am at Guide to Film TV Post on Instagram. So those are my two. My company is Morning Person Pictures. So like good morning, but morningpersonpictures.com. And people can reach out on that site as well.
I love it. I love it. Don, thank you again.
Thanks for the invite. This is fun. I could talk to you, shop with you all day. So,
I mean, I'll probably call you up and just like, let's just chat. let's just chit chat. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, this has been fun. This has been
You'll
really
have to have
fun.
a trilogy of podcasts.
I know. You want to get Susan on here?
Yeah, you should. You should. She's a trip.
Okay, cool. Let's talk to her. Maybe we'll talk. I'll send you an email and maybe we can connect like that. But again, thank you so much for everything. This has been such a great dialogue.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for taking time to do this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So thanks everyone for taking a listen. I'll talk to you guys later and peace out.